l'honneur de vous accueillir à la conférence qui est une suivante d'une série que nous avons commencé avec Irene Nolte, qui a eu un an donné une conférence Serenity Training. Vu le grand succès et l'intérêt que par la suite vous avez porté à cette thématique, nous avons décidé de la faire venir pour faire la suite de cette présentation Serenity Training. Et aujourd'hui, Irene va parler de comment on peut enlever les masques. Ça veut dire les défenses que nous construisons nous-mêmes qui ne sont pas très bonnes et comment prendre soin de votre santé, de vous-même et fonctionner convenablement en bonne santé dans votre environnement professionnel et familial. Donc, je donne aussi parole à Cristiano Sebastiani qui nous a donné un feu vert pour cette conférence, bien sûr avec l'accord du comité exécutif de notre organisation. Donc, Cristiano, je t'invite à dire quelques mots. Merci.
Tu viens de donner l'impression d'un syndicat dynamique, mais très hiérarchisé, où tout passe par son président.
C'est pour ça que
on est loin d'être comme ça, heureusement, pour nous et pour vous. Je ne vais pas du tout prendre du temps de parole d'Irene, simplement pour vous donner quelques détails des procédures. Notre collègue va faire une reprise vidéo de la conférence. Soyez rassurés, vous n'allez pas apparaître en vidéo. Ça sera simplement de ces côtés de la table que la vidéo sera faite pour que les collègues qui n'ont pas pu participer à la réunion d'aujourd'hui puissent par la suite accéder à cette vidéo et vous aurez aussi la possibilité de le faire si jamais vous avez raté l'un ou l'autre passage ou vous voulez vous rappeler de l'importance de cette initiative qui fait partie du spectre d'initiatives que nous mettons en place pour vous assister à chaque étape de votre présence au sein de notre institution, qu'il s'agisse de votre bien-être, de votre carrière, de vos difficultés professionnelles. Nous les faisons ici, nous les faisons dans toutes les institutions en tant que fédéral. Les représentants de nos autres sections dans les autres institutions sont présents. Nous essayons de mettre à votre disposition une palette la plus large possible d'initiatives. Vous avez trouvé à l'entrée l'invitation à une conférence que nous allons organiser le 29 mai avec M. Quatremer qui vient de publier un ouvrage politique sur l'avenir de l'Europe. Mais surtout, je termine chaque fois mon introduction en vous disant que nous faisons l'effort maximum pour vous offrir des initiatives, mais sans doute il y en a d'autres qui pourraient vous intéresser, que nous n'avons pas dans notre carnet. Et donc, n'hésitez pas à nous faire part de toute suggestion pour la poursuite d'actions en cours ou même pour aborder d'autres thèmes, d'autres volets qui n'ont pas été encore couverts par notre action. Et je laisse maintenant la parole à Marie.
Merci beaucoup, Cristiano. En fait, on n'est pas très hiérarchisé parce que toi, tu prononces la décision du comité exécutif. Donc, je répète, nous avons tous décidé de faire cette conférence. Before giving the floor to Irene Nolte, I would like to tell you that Irene, in the end of the conference, she's going to show you how you can implement certain things yourself in the framework of exercises logical levels. It will be only the presentation, and if you are interested in, you have just to put yes on the presence list, because I prepared the list in the way that you can just express your interest, and then we will organize the workshop, a special workshop for these logical levels later. So thank you very much for doing that. And now I'm giving the floor to Irene Nolte. Please, Irene.
What I have prepared for you today is a talk called Shedding the Masks, and it's the continuation, if you like, of the talk called Serenity Training, which introduced the basic concepts of traditional Chinese medicine. Now, I will briefly go into that again today, just briefly for those who weren't there last time. Also because traditional Chinese medicine really informs you of how you can sustain your emotional and physical health throughout the year, so in the different seasons. So I have my friendly assistant there who I've given a secret code to go to the next page. Okay, so today's talk is going to be a combined approach. On the one hand, you have the 5 elements. So basically, that's the basis of traditional Chinese medicine. You will be introduced to that, and what that does is that it will give you information on emotional and physical health throughout the year and how you can sustain that. But on top of that, you will also be introduced to the 5 different masks we're all wearing. Now, I'm going to be using the term masks and defenses interchangeably throughout the talk. What I mean with defenses or masks is psychological defenses. So my theory is, or my observation is, that we all use psychological masks, and we use them in different settings of our life, whether it's professional or private. And we're going to be discovering what these defenses do, because of course they have a use, they have a function, they protect us in a certain way, otherwise we wouldn't be using them. And so not only will I show you what these masks are, but on top of it I will also show you what the underlying needs are. So what's hidden underneath the mask, and how can you address the needs that underlie these masks, and then relate them back to the 5 elements. So, needless to say that we live in very hectic times. I sometimes get the feeling that time is speeding up. And also, one could also argue that every living system is under crisis right now. So whether we look at political systems or economic systems, but also family systems, or indeed our immune systems, or of course the ecological system, last but not least. And so while all these living systems are in crisis, that of course has an impact on us. And so it is in this context that I find it all the more important that we can understand ourselves better, because the more we understand ourselves, the more compassionate we can be with ourselves and support ourselves better. Now, what you see on this graph depicts the brainwaves at different levels of stress. Right at the bottom on the left you have delta. Delta is are the levels of brainwaves when you are in deep sleep and therefore deeply resting. Theta is lighter sleep. Coming up to alpha, and alpha is really, really important. Here we are at 8 to 13 hertz or cycles per second. This is where you daydream, or you might be engaging with a light meditation. Now, when I say meditation, I don't necessarily mean that you have to buy your Tibetan meditation pillow and sit there in front of a burning candle, which becomes another thing to do. It can also mean that you just quite simply walk through the park and you just pause for a moment and you come back to yourself. Or, you just look at the wind going through the leaves and you just pause. And that is absolutely paramount to sustain our health, because it is in that state that we heal and that we come back to ourselves. It is also in that state that we open to intuition, and I firmly believe that we all have intuition. It is that voice that can inform us or give us direction in life if we allow ourselves to listen to it. It's also a very creative place. Now, coming up from there, we have low beta. So here we're talking 13 to 20 hertz or cycles per second. This is where you want to be in the workplace. So you have focused attention, you're in a state of learning, and you engage with calm analytical thinking. So it's a little bit higher, you're concentrating, but you feel safe. Coming up from here, we reach high beta. Now this is 20 to 50 hertz or cycles per second. In this state, you experience extreme stress, and it's really that state, you get this rush of adrenaline and even cortisol. And with that rush of adrenaline, you get ready to either fight or flight or flee or freeze, of course. Now, none of these states are bad, and by all means you need high beta when confronted with a situation that threatens you, because you need to react. The problem, however, is if you get stuck in high beta, that is burnout. That's when you get to burnout, because it can be a real threat, but it can also be a perceived threat in your life. Now let's imagine that you are in a work situation that you do not feel safe in for whatever reasons, whether they're real or perceived. Now your nervous system is going to be repeatedly fired up to like a high alarm state, and that in itself constitutes such an assault on your immune system. So then, of course, the question becomes, how do you come back to alpha? How do you do that? How do you ground? And part of this talk is going to address this question. So, taking the present context into account, we have external factors over which we, of course, do not have that much control, such as environmental factors and also hereditary factors. There is, however, a small part we can do to sustain our health, and that is to control our thinking patterns or to work on our thinking patterns and our diet. In the present climate, with all the stress we're bombarded with, and it's such multi-level stress, we have a real surge of lifestyle-related illnesses, so such as depression, burnout, chronic fatigue, obesity, and of course also cancer. So this talk is going to try and address how you can counteract, to the best of your abilities, of course, these impacts that come from the outside and also the inside. So what I'm going to present to you is a brief introduction to traditional Chinese medicine. I do want to underline, however, that every person is different, and therefore every person's health is different. And I think you just need to find out what works best for you. Traditional Chinese medicine really worked for me and it really helped me, but I do not for 1 second suggest that it is the answer. There are so many different answers. You know, maybe the Indian system of Ayurveda works best for you, or you might want to become a raw food eater. Whatever works for you, you need to find it out and pursue those questions for yourself. Now, what is traditional Chinese medicine, TCM? It is essentially an observational practice. So it is more or less 2,000 years old. Some people say it's 4,000 years old. So by contrast, I think Western medicine holds maybe 500 years along the road. Now, I've put the symbol of concentric circles to symbolize this approach we have in TCM, that if someone has a symptom, for instance, a stomach ulcer, that then would be the dot right in the middle. That's the symptom we start from. And then slowly, slowly we move out from there. So the next circle, for instance, would be, I would ask the person, so how many coffees do you drink regarding you have a stomach ulcer? Quite often these two go together. People are very stressed, they keep on pushing themselves, have lots of coffees. So then the next circle would then be the relations people have with their colleagues, with their boss. Perhaps the next circle would be, what are the family relations like? And so we continuously zoom out to really try and understand the person in his or her entirety, to really support the person wherever that person can have support. What that means is that a symptom becomes essentially a call for change. So here is not an approach where you have a symptom, you go to the doctor, you take a medication that suppresses the symptom, and that's it, and you're left with it. Here really, every symptom, every illness is an invitation to listen and engage with change. Now, what is actually health? So this friendly, old-looking man is Michio Kushi. Some of you might know him. He's one of the key people who brought macrobiotics to the Western world. Now, macrobiotics is a dietary and lifestyle approach that continuously seeks balance. It always seeks balance. So this is basically what my presentation is based on. So it always takes the symptoms of the person or the condition and then seeks to redress that condition and support it. Macrobiotics really gained momentum in the aftermath of the Second World War, after the nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And after that, the Japanese population had to learn to deal with these high levels of radioactivity. And macrobiotics was really a way for them to counteract the horrific effects these bombs had on their health. Now, Michio Kushi defines health in the following way, and in the context of this talk, I permitted myself to add 2 points. So, to him, health is having abundant energy without fatigue. Now, I find that in the Western context so interesting, because we're all so tired, or not all, I don't want to generalize, but so many of us are so often so tired. Having an excellent appetite, enjoying deep and restful sleep, having excellent memory, using anger constructively. I find that so important, because very often we don't even allow ourselves to feel our anger. Being joyous and alert, and very importantly, the 7th point, having endless gratitude for life and other people. Now that is also a really important point. And just a tip, I find it really, really useful to keep a gratitude journal. So in phases in which you're not feeling too well, or things are not going the way you would hope for, I find it really, really useful to keep a gratitude journal, and every evening really force yourself to write down 2 or 3 points for which you're grateful for in your day. And then as you look back, you notice that actually there's a lot you can be grateful for. Now I've added the last 2 points, which is being in touch with your own needs. I find that really important because so many of us are really trained or have trained themselves to just soldier on and keep on going, disregarding your true needs. And I find that it's so important to be in touch with them and knowing them. And of course, living a life of purpose. If you feel that you're contributing to some greater good, whichever it is, that in itself will sustain your health. Now, what is traditional Chinese medicine? This symbol, you surely all know it, is the yin-yang. Now, it is far more than some mundane, hippie, Woodstock symbol people had on their t-shirts as they were driving in their little, WV buses to the festival. So it's a profoundly intelligent and how can I say this? Profoundly intelligent symbol. What it shows is that I can say it this way. Basically, the ancient Chinese and also the present Chinese believed that everything that is alive is imbued by one great life force, which they called qi or qi. You might know this from Qigong or Tai Chi, those of you doing martial arts. So it's this great life force that gives life to absolutely everything, from us humans to the grass, to the mountaintop, whatever you want, to the clouds and the galaxies. And to them, they observed, or they decided, that this life force had an essentially binary nature. So it had 2 poles, a positive one and the negative one called yin, one called yang. Now you will notice that where one begins, the other ends, and vice versa. So these 2 polarities constantly oppose each other. They constantly call each other and repel each other. One creates the other, one destroys the other, and it's this continuous flow of creation. And that, of course, is the basis of duality. Now, if you think about it, in life, we have duality everywhere. There's no day without night. We wouldn't have the left side without the right side. We wouldn't have a female polarity without a male polarity, etc. So this binary or dualistic nature is really at the bottom of everything that is alive. They're now finding out also that on the DNA strings, the amino acids also continuously inform each other through this dualistic approach. Okay. Now, you must remember that traditional China was an essentially agrarian society, and so much of their wisdom was derived or based upon the agricultural cycle. So, like us, they had the 4 seasons, but they added a 5th season, which is late summer. And this I find deeply fascinating. To them, late summer was so important that they called it another season, because to them it was the end of the summer, so when the harvest was brought in, and it was this moment of pause where everything comes to a standstill. So after all the hard work of spring, of summer, of tossing and toiling the soil, etc., there came the moment where everything would stop and rest. And this is something the Western culture has very much lost, that after all the hard work we actually celebrate it and pause and enjoy contentment through it and satisfaction. Now, to these 5 seasons, they added 5 symbols, which I will just briefly mention. Water, tree. So they called it water, tree, fire, earth, and metal. I'm not going to go into it because it's not relevant for this talk. But adding to the seasons, they've always added a pair of organs, because they believe that if you live in accordance with the laws of nature, then these organs receive the most energy in that season. So if you rest a lot in winter we're meant to hibernate, the energy comes to a standstill in nature, we're meant to rest. And here also our kidneys get some rest. That also makes sense from a Western physiological sense, that if we keep on pushing ourselves, if we keep on having, another coffee, some people even a Red Bull, that of course gives a kick to the kidneys and the adrenal glands, which are located on the kidneys, and we continuously deplete our kidneys. So very often people who are extremely exhausted have lower back pain where the kidneys are situated. And that is just a sign of extreme exhaustion, and the remedy is rest. Coming up from there we have spring. That is the tree energy. The idea of that with spring, of course, nature, the energy in nature rises, as it just did. And everywhere you have flowers and young shoots coming out of the trees. And this is the energy of the liver and the gallbladder. Now, if you think about it, in the Christian tradition, before Easter, people used to fast. People would stop eating for some time to detox. Some of us still do. And there is deep wisdom behind that, because you want to detox your liver in spring, because you want to be part of that rising energy that's prevalent everywhere in nature, especially after the Christmas celebrations. Then coming up from there, you have fire. But the symbol means that heat always rises to the highest point. Equally in summer, the energy is the most expansive. So in traditional societies, people would come together, celebrate. It was an extremely joyous moment, and in that it would nourish the heart. Then coming to late summer, as I mentioned, that was the end of the really intense summer season, where everything would come to a halt. We call it Indian summer here in the West. So at the end of this really expansive, intense summertime, and just before the energy sinks down again towards autumn, there are a few weeks of rest and pause and halting. And that's the stillness and calm and trust is represented by the earth element. Just as the earth, we can always trust it will supposedly always be there. And that then is symbolized, or that is linked to the stomach and spleen. If you've had a good harvest, you're not going to be hungry for the rest of at least the winter. And so then that leads to trust and the sense of abundance. Yeah, it's deeply linked to abundance. And then coming to the last element, that's the metal element. Now here it's linked to the lung and large intestine. Metal is a little bit mysterious as an element in the sense that it's meant to stand for purity. And then of course with your lungs you take in air and oxygen. With large intestine we let go of what we no longer need. As such, also in the cycle of the year or in our life cycle towards the end of our life, we let go. We just let go of things and we just stay with what is the purest and truest to us. Now, linked to the organs are emotions, because the Chinese believe that in these organs ground and house these different emotions. So in the kidneys, if there's a lot of fear, and of course fear is again linked to the adrenal glands, that will have an impact on the kidneys. Conversely, if you've been very tired, such as in a burnout through a protracted period of time, your kidneys will be impacted. Coming up, liver and gallbladder. So if your liver is very congested or very sluggish or full of toxins, then there might be a possibility that you feel quite a lot of anger and frustration. So if you feel a lot of anger and frustration, that might mean that your liver needs a little bit of support. Conversely, if it's healthy, then you have great vision of where you want to go in your life and you feel very confident with that. For the German speakers, we actually have a saying in that for the liver, dir ist eine Laus über die Leber gelaufen. Any German speakers? Okay, no. Okay, great. And I looked it up. There's also something in the English language, it's from the Yiddish tradition. It's like, what am I, chopped liver? You know this expression? To say like, I'm sick and tired of the way you're treating me. So this concept of anger and liver was quite known. Any Italian speakers there? Because I know one in Italian as well. It's roderse il figato, something like fegato, voilà, that's it. So in many different languages this actually exists, this knowledge between anger and the liver. So not just the Chinese who observe it. Okay, coming up from here to the heart. The heart, of course, is the seat of joy. When we've had a profound shock, there might be hysteria. People talk a lot, sometimes after they've had a shock. And then going to the next, that's the stomach and spleen. So as I explained, of course, if the harvest was good, if we're feeling safe and calm and centered, there's trust, and conversely there's worry. So if you're a person who constantly worries and thinks and ruminates about everything, that might be an indication that your spleen or stomach needs some support, and I will tell you how to support it in a minute. And lastly, lung and large intestine. The lungs in traditional Chinese medicine are the seat of sadness. So if you have lots of lung issues, also asthma and these kind of things, that could mean that your lungs need some support. So now I'm going to make the link to the masks, the 5 defenses. we have these 5 different names. Now, I do need to say a word of caution. I understand and I feel the same that these terms can sound a little bit judgmental and very absolute. They are not meant that way. So the terminology for the 5 masks is meant to give you an indication for the energetic expression you might perceive in different moments when you feel threatened or you're afraid of being rejected, etc. They are by all means not a terminology that you need to apply to yourself. Now, linked to the fatigue of the kidneys is the term exhausted giver. The real term was actually masochist, but I thought, no, I can't use this term here in this presentation. So, but the true terminology would be masochist or exhausted giver. Coming up is the controller, so people who really need to exert control and they have quite a lot of hidden anger inside of them. Coming up from there, we have the escapist. Wilhelm Reich, the one who developed this terminology, actually used the word schizoid. Now again, I thought that's maybe too strong a term, but with schizoid he did not mean schizophrenic. Extremely important. He meant this thing that, and we're going to go into it, this thing that people do when they escape their bodies, when they don't want to be here because it feels too threatening and doesn't feel safe to be here. Then from the next, we have the needy defense. Again, there's a different word called oral. I didn't want to use it. And the last is rigid, people who are very rigid. Okay. Now, what are the 5 defenses? The typology was developed by Wilhelm Reich and Alexander Lowen, and in the tradition of psychotherapy, and it's very much based on body-mind psychotherapy, so really linking physical aspects of being to our mind, really linking those 2 sides. Extremely important to say that none of these defenses are bad or condemnable. They're not. They're inherently good because they're trying to protect us. So they quite simply are individual coping mechanism that arose circumstantially, so through upbringing, through family, through school, through whatever happened throughout our lives, that then shaped the mask. This is because the pain of the rejection we felt, because we weren't appreciated in the way we wanted to be appreciated, was so much that we had to develop some kind of defense strategy from that to never again occur. So one fear we all share, of course, is rejection. Every one of us is afraid, or I take the liberty to say that every one of us is afraid of being rejected. And so we're all trying our best to navigate this fear of rejection. So these masks cover up very particular fears and needs. We have different masks in different life situations, so you can wear one mask or have a particular defense in the workplace, and then when you go home have a different persona. That's quite interesting actually. That said, one mask dominates. So in general, one pattern dominates throughout our life. I will show the full spectrum of the defense, but again, by all means, you can also have lesser degrees, so that it can just be indications of that. It's really useful to understand these defenses so that you can understand yourself better, and so that you can help yourself better, and not only yourself, this is after all in the work context, so that you can understand your colleagues better. So if one of your colleagues, or indeed bosses, has a really disturbing, annoying behavior that you cannot understand, I truly hope that this talk will then help you and see a little bit further, so that you can support each other better. What's also important is that is to know that these defenses keep us from feeling our own vulnerability. So of course, by definition, a defense is meant to uphold a certain persona. But if we stay in that, we can't reach these more vulnerable parts within ourselves, and this is why it's important to know them. Now, here we're going to have our first mask, the exhausted giver, which Wilhelm Reich called the masochist. Now, the exhausted giver, by definition, gives and gives and gives and gives, cares for others, and places others first. These people generally, they overwork, and they essentially exhaust themselves in the secret hope of finally being appreciated and loved. So it's quite a burdensome approach to life, of course. Now, the self-image masochists or exhausted givers have is one of very little power. They feel they have very, very little power. And the mask is built around a profound sense of shame and guilt. So for some reason they feel very, very ashamed or even guilty. They feel maybe they've done something wrong in their lives. And so to compensate that, they give and give and give and give. Or they were made, someone made them feel inadequate. And so to compensate that, they overgive. So in any situation, an exhausted giver makes a demand for him or herself, then immediately the sense of shame or guilt arises, and so they immediately withdraw again from that. What are the underlying fears of the exhausted giver? They are to never be thanked or recognized, and so they continuously feel they have to give more. They don't dare to ask to have their needs met, and therefore they work extra hours and give more than what is asked for. They conform to the desires and demands of others, sacrificing a sense of self. Secretly, they feel they deserve more, but they don't dare to ask for it. So they have quite a lot of anger and, of course, profound fear and exhaustion. So in order to keep from facing that fear of that rejection, that if they ask for it, it will be rejected, they develop all these elaborate strategies to ask for just for enough to get by, but never more than that. So below their great heart, because often they're great-hearted people, masochists have tremendous rage and anger, and they feel deprived of what they think they deserve. And they see the world as essentially divided between those who have power and those who don't. So in that context, of course, life can seem like the Greek tale of Sisyphus, the Greek god who was condemned to continuously push up that huge rock up the hill, and once he reached the top, the rock would just slide down all the way again, and he would have to push it up again. Extremely exhausting. Thank you. Yeah. Now, linking that back to traditional Chinese medicine, it works this way. So all exhausted givers are very fatigued and need to support their kidneys, but not everyone who has weak kidneys or has exhausted givers is a masochist. Yeah, so it's monodirectional. So with exhausted kidneys, you might experience a lot of fatigue, exhaustion, and lower back pain, and also tinnitus goes with that. Tinnitus is linked to an imbalance in the kidneys, and it's also life in high beta, where you feel under threat on almost a perpetual basis. And that of course leads to burnout. I've added just a small mention on burnout because so many people suffer from it. Generally, people who burn out are highly devoted, talented and invested achievers. So very often these are people who give their all because they really, really care. And also often people who burn out, they live in this ideal, they have this idealized vision of themselves and of the workplace and of how the world should be. And that, of course, is confronted by contending factors, internal and external contending factors. And so given that they live in this constant conflict, if you like, burnout is quite simply a normal response to this extremely exhausting existence. Now, external factors can be things like bad management, or it can be wrong expectations placed upon the person. It can be a problem of hierarchy and lack of communication, but also internally, quite often people who burn out are people who haven't learned to delegate, in other words, to trust. And so, these people think they have to do it all by themselves. Now, in burnout, of course, then that's a life in high beta, so the world is seen as an antagonistic place. There's lots of anxiety, there's worry, there's fear, loss of concentration and control, and ultimately loneliness. Burnout is a very lonely place to be in. Okay, so exhausted giver, how can you heal? What can you do to change that pattern? Now, exhausted givers must learn to take care of themselves. It sounds really mundane, but it isn't. To those people, it's really difficult to understand that they have needs. They need to discover what these needs are, and that they have a right to articulate these needs and stand up for them and indeed receive them. They're so often in such deep denial of their own needs. They need to delegate, they need to learn to delegate and ask for help. And well, with regard to their needs, they're often very simple needs, such as getting more rest or time alone, but also they also need recognition, and essentially they need to heal their kidneys and also their liver, the underlying anger. Now, with regard to diet, to heal the kidneys and exhaustion, you need to increase long and slow cooking styles. So if you're very exhausted, burnout, do not go for the coffee and salad on the run. That is pretty much the worst you can do. So you want to increase the cooked vegetables, absolutely reduce the coffee, because you know coffee really has an impact also on the kidneys. You want to have short grain brown rice. Long grain has a different energy than short grain in macrobiotics. Short grain brown rice is much more concentrated. The energy goes much deeper in, and also it cooks longer, so it's going to convey a different energy. You want to have seasonal root vegetables, so the kidneys belong to the winter element, so really have, you know, carrots, parsnips, etc., everything that grows in the ground, and quality salt, such as miso or tamari. Yeah. Now, with regard to lifestyle, very, very important. So this is for the masochists, so the exhausted givers, but also if you're tired, you need silence, and you need rest, and you need to copy nature in winter, you need to hibernate. So really don't feel guilty about doing that. Take that time out, stay at home in the evenings, just really, really rest and come back to yourself. If you can meditate, again, meditation can be classical meditation, but it can be anything else as well. Maybe you like journaling, maybe you like gardening, maybe you enjoy cooking, anything that gives you this very reflective alpha nature. You have to come back to alpha. In alpha we heal. Contact with ancestors. Now, I mean that in the real sense, but also in the abstract sense. So of course, if they have died, it's a little bit difficult, but it's just engaging with we live in such linear time, so it's really engaging with that deeper time to really get a deeper understanding for where you're coming from and your ancestors and just your whole life trajectory, and just getting a true appreciation for that. Also, what's really healing for the kidneys is to introvert a little bit. So now I would just like to invite you to do a little exercise with me that's profoundly healing to the kidneys. It's based on the idea that throughout the day our attention is so much focused on the outside. So we're constantly focusing on the outside, on others. And what we do with our brains is that we're constantly filtering the reality we see. And what we do on top of that, we constantly ask ourselves, am I accepting or rejecting, accepting or rejecting? Am I being accepted or rejected, accepted or rejected? And that is such an onslaught on ourselves and on our nervous system. So if we could just give ourselves a break for a second, it would already immensely help our health. So I'm just going to invite you to just lean back for a moment and just take a few deep breaths. If it feels okay with you, you can close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. And perhaps you can notice your heartbeat. Just notice your feet on the floor. If they're crossed over, try and have both feet on the floor. And just allow your breath to enter both your stomach, your belly, and your lungs. I mean, going from the top of your torso to the bottom of your torso. And just listen to what you can hear. Perhaps you can hear the projectors in the background. And just come back to yourselves. Now in this state, you're in contact with yourself. And you're really in touch with yourself, and you're not focusing your attention onto the outside world. And that is a profoundly healing state. Okay, just slowly come back to the room. Now, I'm inviting you to do that a few times throughout the day. Whenever you think about it, whenever things get a little bit too fast or a little bit too hectic, do that. It takes 20 seconds, and it already has an impact on your nervous system and on your health. Now, strong kidneys, they manifest by having strong will, in TCM, the kidneys are the storehouse of your energy. If they're healthy, you're going to feel safe. So you can switch easily between alpha and beta. You're in touch with your own needs and you have stamina to see through your projects. So that was the first element and the first mask. Going to the second element and the second mask. Here we have the controller. So I really spent a lot of time trying to find adequate images, and that kind of worked. It's a little bit extreme, but you get the idea. Okay, so controllers control others to feel safe. They use their power to make others conform to their needs and their desires. They attempt to control others by limiting the freedom of others and taking away the choices of others. They keep others in boundaries so that they can feel safe. In extreme cases, they can be verbally abusive or physically abusive. They often engage in seduction to attract the control of others, and they can be highly manipulative. So controllers, what they will do, they will really try to assess the situation in a chess-like manner and really anticipate already the next things to then already control what might or could happen. Controllers very often have a strong constitution and they easily rise to success, and they tend to have an idealized image of themselves. Trump. Perfect. Exactly. Perfect example. Yes. Okay, now as an employer, he just sacked the FBI head, right? So he was afraid. So they fear that their employees will feel no commitment to their jobs. So they have this constant paranoia to some extent. They're afraid that their employees will take time off work, do poor work, and in the extreme situations steal resources. So they need to be constantly checked and controlled. Their employees therefore need to be closely managed with a suspicious eye, and controllers never trust them to do a good job or that indeed these people feel any commitment to their work. Mm-hmm. Only in this way can a controller feel safe and capable of showing appreciation. Now don't forget this, again, we're talking about degrees here, yeah? It can be more extreme or less extreme. The main fears and beliefs of a controller: controllers secretly don't feel that they're worthy of real love and appreciation, and therefore there's great fear of betrayal. They suspect that their aggressive and controlling behavior is offensive, but the fear of losing the other is too much to bear. So controllers secretly have tremendously angry and disappointed at having to constantly arrange and control all their environment. They're really tired that they have to do it, but they don't know how else to be. So as a result, they're prone to angry outbursts, and they have quite a lot of rage and frustration within themselves. Now, anger, as we have seen, is linked to the liver and gallbladder. So again, you can have liver and gallbladder things without being a controller. Symptoms indicating that your liver and gallbladder need attention are anger, frustration, being highly irritable, and if you're overly dominating and too competitive. But conversely, if your liver is underactive, you can also have lack of vision, lack of drive. You can have depression, insomnia, in this case, difficulty falling asleep, because there's a different insomnia that's linked to falling asleep but then waking up at night. And things like rheumatoid arthritis. So you can have an overactive liver or an underactive liver. But in both cases, you address it the pretty much same way. How to heal? Controllers must learn to give others the freedom to speak their truth and to give them their autonomy and allow them to live their own lives. Only then can controllers receive real appreciation and love, because it's based on trust. They need to learn to truly listen to others, and listening will help the controller to know his colleagues and get to trust them. Trusting them will help the controller relax and experience true appreciation and rest. Now they must learn to avoid manipulation at all costs. Really stop doing that. And they must heal their liver and gallbladder. Healing diet, really limit animal foods because they contribute to liver stagnation. Also limit too much salt and baked flour products. Your liver really wants to soften and open and relax, and with these kind of food products it has a tendency to congest. You want to increase eating leafy green vegetables. So that can be anything from spring onions or nettles or kale, anything that you can find. The chlorophyll really helps the liver to open and relax. It also helps to eat less, maybe have a few more salads, depending on how strong your digestive system is. Avoid alcohol and coffee. And you want to increase the sour taste in your food. So ideally, and anyone can do this by the way, in the morning have a glass of warm water, first thing in the morning, before you have your shower, a glass of warm water with a little bit of lemon and a little bit of apple cider vinegar. That's really going to help opening and relax and detox your liver. And again, increase soft cooked vegetables as much as you can. Now, with regard to lifestyle, what really heals the liver and this controlling behavior is creativity. So really to engage in some creative outlet. That can be anything from writing, acting, anything that brings joy and allows the expression of your own truth. Play is also great. Now, engage with vigorous, non-competitive exercise, because if it's competitive, that again is going to engage this stressed, controlling behavior, and promote relaxation in any form that feels appropriate to you. Healthy liver and gallbladder. You have a clear vision of where you want your life to go, of who you want to be, and of how you can engage people around you in that. You have clear direction in life. You experience great creativity and you feel very adaptable. You're a calm listener. You lead by example and not by dominance. Coming to the third mask, the escapist, or also called the schizoid. Now, escapists have a tendency to lose awareness of events and of the present moment. In colloquial English, we would say these people space out. They just kind of disengage from being there. This person enters a haze, loses focus, and is no longer present to you or to the conversation. Often these people appear detached from reality. They appear distant and sometimes also withdrawn. In children, we can often witness this if they're just constantly on their phone or constantly on the internet, etc. They try to disengage. They try not to be there too much. For adults, they have a tendency to intellectualize important matters. Now, the more schizoid a person is, the more that person, the less the person is in touch with him or herself. So that also means that this person then will be out of touch with their own abilities and their own talents, because they kind of live a little bit outside of themselves. They try to move away from an experience, from a sensorial experience of reality, and they can have tremendous tension in their body. Now, what are the underlying fears and beliefs of people who engage with this mask? They think that if they experienced their true feelings and expressed their truth, they would be destroyed or attacked for it. So these people normally have had a deep shock or several deep shocks in their lives. They believe that their own truth constitutes great danger for themselves, so they better not say it. And they seek self-protection in no longer being present. So that actually has a purpose, like all masks do. They go into the state of anonymity. Often this is the result of a parent who was him or herself also schizoid. So these parents were quite distant, and so the child never got the grounding, never got this grounding contact to truly be there. Or they had a very threatening parent, an overbearing parent, and so this child who then becomes an adult, really tries to disengage from reality by going into that defense. What happens in those moments is that the consciousness leaves the body in order to escape this tension they feel, and it shows up as being detached from reality. How do you hear that? Now, these people must learn to ground. That is really the most important thing. So engage with any grounding activity you can find. So that can be anything from gardening. I think gardening is fantastic as a therapeutic tool. Gardening or cooking, pottery, anything that also works with the hands. In the yogic tradition, they also say that the heart chakra extends to the palm of your hand. So anything you can do also to engage the hands is really, really healing. They also need to address the immense anger that they cannot express their truth. and that they actually don't know what they truly want because they're so defended. They feel they have to be someone false, disconnected from their true self, and so in order to counteract that, also engage with deep breathing and to release that body tension. So you can also do martial arts for that, or whatever feels true to you, and of course heal the heart and the liver. Now, back to traditional Chinese medicine, symptoms that the heart has been affected are things like experience shock, but also pain and a tension in the chest. You can have nervous anxiety. People who stutter generally have had a shock to their heart. Things like arrhythmia or panic attacks, of course, by definition. Can be a heartbroken person or an emotionally shaken up person. So how to heal, or lifestyle recommendations: sociability, so engaging with community, friends, to go and dance is fantastic. Loving contact with others, so really try and generate this community kind of feeling. Having a pet is fantastic, so taking care of a dog, of a cat, etc. Singing is inherently good for the heart. Laughing, expressing your heart, and also some form of meditation. Grounding activities, just as I said. Getting massage, any form of massage to release that tension from the body and helping the person ground. And baths are actually an incredibly healing tool. How to support the heart from a dietary perspective: stop sugar, processed foods, alcohol, anything that keeps escapists from experiencing their true feelings. Corn on the cob, polenta and amaranth are just some form of food that really support the health of the heart. And bitter foods such as chicory, dandelion, asparagus, Brussels sprouts are also good to sustain the health of the heart. And of course all the berries. Summertime is berry time, and there's always a link between what grows during that season and how you can support your organs and your emotions in that season. A healthy heart, of course, the person is radiant, has a good sense of self. There's joy, there's laughter in an adequate kind of way, and having a strong spirit. Okay, coming to the fourth mask and the earth element. Now here we have the oral or the needy defense. Now you will recognize a so-called oral by having spent time with that person. You feel absolutely exhausted afterwards. You feel really, really drained. I don't know if you've experienced that. Quite often these people, they just take and take and take, and they want your attention, and they ask all these things, and you give them all this advice, and then immediately they reject it. So they just take and take and take, and it's incredibly exhausting. Yeah, that's as much as we said on this slide. Yeah. Now, what these people actually want is that they want to be mothered or fathered. They want you to give them your mothering or fathering energy. Their central fear is that they will never have their needs met. So they're in this constant state of neediness, and they hope that the latest person, namely you, will give them attention and help them out of that dilemma they're based on living in. There's a great terror of abandonment. So very often these people are really afraid of being alone, of being left alone. There's lack of will and tremendous self-pity. So these people also experience a profound rejection of themselves up to a point of self-hatred. And yeah, as I said, they're very afraid of being alone. Now, how to heal this? Or that's linked to the stomach and spleen. If you experience these symptoms, that might mean that your spleen, especially the spleen, might need support. So there's lots of worry going on. There might be weight gain, constant eating and nibbling, having a sweet tooth, so you're feeling very cold to sweet foods. There's a sense of being orphaned. With that, I mean that you don't really feel like you belong anywhere. You haven't really found your tribe or your community, and you have this profound sense of loneliness and not belonging in this world. And also a sense of home. Now, there might be problems with conception, very often linked to the spleen. So here the dietary recommendations are very important for that. There's anxiety and worrying, and either you're overly giving, so that's also the exhausted giver, or you're overly needy. So these people have a difficulty balancing either giving far too much and then they don't dare to ask anything for themselves, or they just take and take and take. Can be both. Now, how to heal this? Orals really need to spend time by themselves. They really have to confront that fear. That's one of the most healing things. They just have to break through that fear, spend time alone, and really experience their own power, which they actually truly have. They're so desperate for care that rarely they realize others need it too. So they must learn to nourish and care for others. Exercise is fantastic because it brings out the warrior nature within us, so it helps us come over this kind of like needy place. Also very important to get legitimate mothering from strong women healers. So find someone who you like, and then go to this person repeatedly to really support that need you have. Express gratitude for all that is given and heal the spleen. Now, in terms of lifestyle, that means having warmth, really generating warmth in your life, in your social contacts, in your surrounding, in your home, getting touch, so massage, any form of massage, having a nourishing home, satisfying food. It's really generating the sense of abundance in your life. It's having the sense of having enough money. Of course, that's always relative, but it's having the feeling that you have enough. Being listened to is one of the most healing things you can do for yourselves. Having a friend, or even a therapist, or the local person at the flower shop, anyone who really listens to you. Getting adequate mothering, particularly if your relationship to your mother has been difficult, then it's quite likely that your spleen energy has been affected and that you might need more mothering throughout your life, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all need mothering, by the way. And also exercising more and engaging this warrior quality in your life. Now, from a dietary perspective, you need to stop dairy and oily, sweet foods, because they all replicate this wrong mothering energy that you don't want, that keeps you in this kind of needy state. You need to have regular warm meals. So if your stomach and spleen are low, don't have raw vegetables or fruit. Really, you really want to cook them, steam them, or bake them, because you do not have the digestive power to digest these kind of foods. You need to pay attention to chew well, and before starting to eat, just contact your intestines. Just be in touch with your intestines. Now, with regards to having a sweet tooth, if you are drawn to sweet things, that means you need them, that you want them. So by all means, just introduce good sugars into your life. So that can mean things like barley syrup or rice syrup, cooking fruit with these things, or even baking with them occasionally. So, but really eating healthy sweets. And increase naturally sweet occurring foods, such as sweet potato, parsnip, pumpkin, onion, or local fruit. And you want to have long and slow cooking styles. A healthy stomach and spleen gives rise to a sense of stability. You have the ability to take care of others and of yourself. You have clear boundaries in life, and you feel safe. And you feel nourished by life. And coming to the fifth and last mask, that's the rigid, or the false perfect. Now, rigids, as opposed to controllers, they control themselves rather than others. They communicate that they don't need anyone but themselves. I am complete by myself, says the rigid. I don't need you. They're quite often cool and aloof, and they abhor an excess of emotions. They really can't deal with that. And they reject other people's vulnerability. So the more successful a person is, the more they will rely on the rigid defense. Now, to a rigid, image is everything. So they present this perfect facade. So it's the clothes, it's the house, it's the partner, it's the car, if it's a dog, it's a pedigree dog. Everything has to be perfect to the others. They're extremely defended. And they have difficulty leaving the house without making sure that every hair is just in place and that the clothes are just right. Everything must look perfect and beautiful. So the strength of that defense is that they create order. They have great ability of creating order and beauty. There's always something good in every defense, nothing wrong with the defense. So they place enormous value on everything that armors them and protects them from criticism and judgment of others. They are the most defended of the 5 defenses. Now, what are their underlying fears and beliefs? They're often supremely proud and highly competitive, and they need to feel better than others in order to feel safe. They hate neediness and refuse to need anyone. And of course, what's underneath all of that is that they fear to be humiliated or shamed. In the past, they have been, and they swore to themselves, consciously or unconsciously, that that would never again happen in their lives, and hence the defense. Below that, they're angry and disappointed, but they don't show it. They express their anger, however, by withdrawing their caring affection. So if you're in a relationship with a rigid, what the rigid does, they just give you a little bit of their love, but never their full heart. And then you're constantly maneuvering that edge. Love is inherently dangerous, as to love means to risk being open and vulnerable. So they hold back their love and approval and intimacy. And in the workplace, of course, that means being not fully approachable. And they want to be pursued and chased, wanted and needed in their aloofness. That often means that the lungs and large intestine need support. Now, symptoms linked to the lung and large intestine, having breathing difficulties, of course, asthma, lots of sadness or some sadness. Skin issues are linked to the lungs in TCM, and waking at night, so that's the different insomnia. It's not the problem of falling asleep, but it's waking in the middle of the night. Now, underactive lungs give rise to this, to a sense of being withdrawn, so these people can be depressed, they can lack self-confidence and are very often in denial of their own needs. And very often what you notice with these people is that they clutter quite a bit, so that these are people who collect lots of things, and the flats and houses are quite often full of stuff they don't actually need. Now, if the lungs are overactive, here we go into the rigid defense, so highly defended people presenting themselves with this perfect image, they're obsessed with order, and they abhor any signs of vulnerability. Healing the rigid defense, so in their commitment to avoiding all forms of vulnerability, they must learn to trust others, they must learn to express their heart and step into their own vulnerability, and experience what they truly feel and share it if they wish to do so. They must find some spiritual practice to open their hearts and connect to something larger than themselves. And ideally also get a pet. So really having a dog is fantastic for rigids, to really open the heart in a safe way and having that loving contact. And of course finding support for the lungs and large intestine. Now, what lifestyle heals the lungs and large intestine? Physical exercise is really important, breathing deeply, also engaging with practical activities such as chopping wood, cutting grass and creating order. So this is particularly for underactive lung people. Mental focus, creating order and tidying up and cleaning are important. This is more for underactive lungs than the rigid. Dietary recommendations, very important. Avoid all milk products. If you have lung problems, if you have a cold, if you have asthma, you really do not want to be eating or drinking any milk products, whether that's milk or yogurt or cheese, etc., because it creates that phlegm, especially if you have sinus problems. You don't want to use these foods. Increase white vegetables, such as cauliflower, daikon, radish.
What is daikon?
Daikon is a form of radish, from Asia. Onions, garlic, parsnips, and celery roots. This is all good because the minerals in those help to break up the congestion in the lungs. Ginger tea is fantastic if you want to heal the lungs. And also stop excess amounts of sugar, processed food, alcohol, to which rigids are strongly attracted, or even pharmaceuticals, anything to keep from feeling. You really need to stop or reduce those. Now, what do healthy lungs look like? There's an ability to let go of the past, so you don't get stuck in these old patterns or in old memories that no longer serve you. You really can move on and let go of whatever you no longer need. You have the ability of taking in new things. You have clarity, and you're very heart-centered, and you have clear boundaries and have self-confidence. That is the end of the first part. Not much left. Okay, next. Yeah. Okay, so this is just maybe a summary of these different emotions. We all have different layers of being, and the most, okay, I think if you click on the pause on the space line, yeah, on the space, okay. So the first layer we have is our persona. It's our defense, right? That's the thing we project towards the outside. And below the persona are our beliefs, the way we just observed them. We just went through the beliefs that all these different defenses have on how to feel safe. And this is because underneath of those beliefs we have fears. We're afraid of engaging with the world in a certain way, and we're afraid of failing or not succeeding in a certain way. Now, underneath those fears, quite often there's anger, because in some way we have lived an injustice or have felt some kind of rejection. And underneath that anger comes sadness. So this is just if we do the work, this is also what I do with my clients in my practice, to really observe what happens underneath as you go deeper and deeper and deeper to an ever deeper state of compassion and understanding for yourself. So underneath the anger, because you have lived an injustice, comes sadness. And sadness is, in this context, a really good place, an inherently good place to be. Because in sadness, you can experience your truth and your compassion for yourself, for what you have lived. So this is a journey that's really worth it to take. Because underneath the truth and the compassion for yourself comes love and gratitude and a seed of joy for who you are and for the way you engage with this world. These are my closing remarks. All of us are seeking the same, to live the expression of our truest self. Every one of us seeks greater freedom and authenticity, as these are the sources of joy. Fear blocks so much. It robs us of so many dreams, of our inner peace, and of becoming who we truly are. It prevents us from experiencing true love for ourselves, for life, and others. We need to work at staying awake. Finding your calling and pursuing it, and staying awake, are the greatest gifts you can give to yourself and to the world. By the way, thank you for listening. And this is actually great because you might be feeling a little bit tired, so this is the ideal moment to do it. Okay. Tap down on the outside of the arm and tap up on the inside of the arm. Great. It's good also against repetitive strain. So if you have problems in the shoulder, in the... I know the translators especially suffer here from repetitive strain. Okay, great. Same on the other arm. Down on the outside. And up on the inside. Great. Okay, now just take your hands and flip them together. Good. And now we're going to take one finger at a time. On every finger you have a meridian ending, so take a small finger and twist, 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 and then pull on it. So, yeah, twist, 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 pull. This actually works in your heart. So, okay, right. So this is liver, liver. So, twist, 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 pull. Right, same middle finger. And index finger. So if you ever get tired in the workplace, you can do this. Now, just notice the difference between the two hands. It feels nice. You know, one is a little bit numb, mine is just a little bit more lively. Okay, so same on the other hand. Twist, 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 and pull. Right. Twist, 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 pull. In shiatsu we do that. So before we start, we just do a little bit of do-in, just to get the energy going. Okay. So just place your hands. First of all, ask the person in front of you. Ask the person in front of you whether it's okay to touch their backs. Okay. Is it okay? Yeah. If you don't have a partner, just join in a group of 2. Yes, they can be 2 groups. Okay, great. Okay, so just in a loving manner, place your hands onto the shoulders of the person in front of you. And just send them some love. You know, just think like, you know, this person has been working hard, came to work, has done their best. We're all trying our best here. Okay, and now just gently massage into the shoulders. Now, if you feel comfortable with your colleague in the workplace, I encourage you to do that. It changes the energy before a meeting. I think it should be compulsory, you know? So, okay, you might notice that one shoulder is more tense than the other. It generally is. Okay, great. Now, you're going to leave one hand on the shoulder and the other hand is going to circulate on the spine to the mid-back. I'm just going to demonstrate it. So, like this, yeah? More or less to the mid-back, you can go to the kidneys. Okay. Everyone okay? Okay, so just do that. That has a direct effect on the nervous system. On the spine, yeah. And you can go all the way to the kidneys. Great. And then back. Yeah. Okay, you can do that. You can do that a few times. Children love this, so you can do this. If you're children at home, by all means. Okay, fantastic. And now just put your hands back onto the shoulders and just kind of like flip down, imagining that you're taking away the stress and burden of that person.